afternoon and welcome to the Mary H. Weiser Center monthly webinar focusing on the social and emotional aspects of life with food allergy. I'm Kim Menzel, the food allergy counselor at the Michigan Medicine Allergy Clinic. We are one of the few clinics to have a full-time counselor on the allergy team to ensure a holistic approach to food allergy management. In addition to the allergists, our team includes nurse educators, dietitians, research coordinators, and myself. My position is funded by the generous donation of supporters of the Mary H. Weiser Center. The center was recently named a Discovery Center of Distinction by FAIR in recognition of their advances in biomedical research into the origin and treatment of food allergy. Visit uofmfoodallergy.org to learn more about the many research initiatives that they are pursuing every day to find a cure for food allergy. Today, I'm so pleased to be joined by Lindsay Schultz. She's joined us before and agreed to be here with us again to share her knowledge as we talk about navigating holiday hazards. Lindsay Schultz is founder of Feed Your Can, a lifestyle brand focused on pairing growth mindset skills with food allergies. FeedYourCan.com includes a podcast, blog, and on-demand classes offering inspiring stories, helpful facts, and everyday life hacks that empower you and other people living with food allergies to flip the script away from fear and adopt a new narrative. Lindsay and her husband are raising 3 children who navigate 8 categories of food allergies daily. Lindsay's focused on helping her children and other families thrive and reach their full potential in life. She holds degrees in psychology and organizational studies from the University of Michigan. She recently left her position at Google to shift into full-time focus on helping people learn tools to navigate daily life with food allergies through Feed Your Can. Today, our focus is on tips and tools to navigate food allergies during the holidays. We know as we begin now, moving toward Halloween, there are multiple holidays for families that occur over these next couple months. Lindsay, thanks for joining me. Let's begin by letting us know what food allergies is exactly your children navigate.
Well, thank you, Kim, so much for the introduction, first of all, and the invitation to come back. I am very pleased to be here. And I will start by saying that our kids are avoiding a long list. We are dealing with peanuts, tree nuts, eggs, legumes, so all beans except green beans, sesame, mustard, and soy protein. So it is a long list. And we've been navigating this journey for over 9 years, but we're still very much learning. And we've found a lot of ways to ensure that we do not opt out of the fun, because we really believe in trying to figure out how to navigate this situation so that we can live fully and just really take advantage of what life has to offer. And we just make sure, of course, that we find them enough foods that are keeping them healthy and growing too.
So, Lindsay, as we move into the hectic holiday season, we're leaning into Halloween, and so we're going to have some specific questions about recommendations about Halloween and safe trick-or-treating. So families, of course, can find this time stressful, even when not living with food allergies, but there's so many stressors navigating family celebrations, all the homemade food, many households, school parties, travel. So a lot of eating away from home and maybe having people bring food into your home. What do you and your husband see, and what have you observed to be the biggest challenges to thriving during the holidays?
Yeah, as you just listed that off, it really does feel like this is the start of a multi-month challenge, right? Where we are trying to get together socially with the people we love, and that should equal fun. But when you involve food and social events with food allergy families, of course, it induces fear and stress. So holidays are definitely a juggling act for families with food allergies, including ourselves. And because of that reconciliation between, the social fun aspect of an event and then the food struggle of fear and anxiety, it's a real big tension rod. Really, it's hard to think of a family holiday that doesn't involve food. And so when you do kind of think through it outside the home, on top of all of these events happening, you have now left your safe bubble And the biggest challenge is really that there are more unknown variables at play that threaten our security and our feelings of safety. So for example, I think of cross contact risks from surfaces at someone else's home who's really well-meaning, but they just don't think of it the same way. Because if you can't see the food allergen, they might think that their counters are clean, or they're not avoiding those foods in their home. And so they're not really thinking about that as a problem, or, getting a verbal confirmation on a baked good ingredient of, oh yeah, we've made this recipe for years. And, these are the 5 ingredients. It's real simple. I'll make sure to avoid the allergen. But what you don't understand, and no one can, is that the manufacturer of, the butter might be putting in, an ingredient that you wouldn't expect. And so not being able to read it before you eat it is a really big struggle with leaving the home. And that's really our motto, is if you can't read it, don't eat it. All the well-meaning homemade foods, potluck style buffets, etc., you really need to plan accordingly in advance, and really make sure that you trust the sourcing of those ingredients, who's making the food, and just have that relationship where you can go back and forth on actually seeing the process with the label. So, even though I think about traditions, holidays are all about traditions. So there may be a homemade pie that has been in the family for years, but, ask to read the label. Otherwise, you're going to be too much at risk. So all of these well-intentioned gestures are just steps in the right direction, but there's not a full peace of mind for a food allergy family until you really understand, the sourcing to plate.
So that makes me think of a question that came in prior to today. Someone submitted a question. So do you ever avoid going to family or friends' houses because it just seems too difficult? And has that been, I think there's grief, for families that are navigating food allergy at times around how things have to be, how things can't be exactly, the wished for, or the maybe the easiest. And maybe there's some things that need to, hard decisions that need to be made. And so are there places that you just won't go, but you really wish you could, or people you want to gather with, but you just don't feel like it can be done in a way that can possibly work?
That's a good question. I think every family is going to have their own line of comfort, and it all depends on the severity of the food allergy, whether it be ingestion or contact sensitive. In our family, ingestion is the fear, and luckily we aren't dealing with just contact sensitivity. But I'll say that we really look at these social events as opportunities to engage with the people we love and that we want to be spending our time with. And so we kind of, have this idea that the main event, or the main entree, if you will, is the fun and the social relationships. And food is like the side dish. It can be an afterthought. So as long as there's not these blatant minefields that you feel like you're going to be dodging. For example, we would never step into Five Guys and Fries with peanut allergies because there's exposed barrels of peanuts. So that's a no-go. In fact, we actually had post a soccer game, half the team of my son's team go into Five Guys and Fries, and we went into a different retail tropical cafe and smoothie place. And afterwards, there was a little bit of that awareness of our, the teammates and their parents being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We didn't realize until," and I said, "No, it's great. It's, enjoy that." We were able to go with the other half of the team. I think if everyone went into Five Guys and Fries, Five Guys, and had their meal there, and we were the only family that couldn't, we would have still flipped the script. We would have said, we'll see you at the next game. We're going to go stop and get, a smoothie, and then make it a reward or like a fun experience for our family. So I think it's really about the social aspect, as long as there's not imminent danger, like the example I just described. But we always prepare backup snacks, and we really do look at food as sort of a nice to have, but not the main draw to getting together.
It's the
And I think
connection, the socializing. It's so maybe
yes,
there's lots of ways families can suggest gathering where it's less food focused, if that's easier.
yeah, and even for some people, they revolve around food. Great. But what brings us to that event is not food, it's the people. And so I think it's just reorienting our frame of mind to say, this is a barrier that we face, but it doesn't have to stop us from living. And someone may be getting excited to go because of grandma's pie or because of the custom cake at a birthday party or something. And so then we bring popsicles, and we have an accompaniment. So I know that's a little bit of a answer that touches in a few areas, but I think it's really hitting the point home that you just said. It's about the social connection, and it's also about people first, relationships first. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's an excellent point. And another way for families to think about it when they might be just feeling like how they can't do it or what needs to be different. But if they look at it through that lens, it's really all about what can we do?
Yes.
So can you give a couple examples of other situations your family has navigated? I think the life hacks that you talk about are so important. Those are good takeaways for our family.
Yeah, we have to back up to the beginning. So the beginning of our food allergy journey, we didn't have these life hacks, right? We were stumbling along through a maze and felt like we were hitting walls turn after turn. And it was really hard. We felt like we were on an island because we didn't know what we didn't know. And because we were learning all about these food safety, how to read a label, we learned that milk had over 100 different alternative names on labels. I mean, that's wild. Or even just how to check ingredients. We messed up. We had blunders, and it was a steep learning curve. I remember feeling like I didn't want to leave the house with our son because it was too dangerous out there. And then, I just quickly remembered our life before kids, and we're like, wait, that's not us. But I do remember a particular time when our son, he was a baby. He was more like a toddler. He was breaking out into hives at Thanksgiving, and it was at our house. So we couldn't figure out what the culprit was, and it was like a potluck style meal. But we were so careful in advance to check the ingredients and really prepare our guests and our family members who were bringing things over, that because we were learning together and we wanted to do it in a way where we could all be on the same page. And our family is very close knit, and we also have proximity in our favor, so we could be on the same page. But so here we are preparing this giant Thanksgiving meal with all these side dishes that are safe. And of course, he's a toddler, so he's going to be picky and not eat any of it that we're preparing, that we're thinking is going to be great. And then he still reacts. And to this day, we don't know what that culprit was. But to say we were on edge after that is an understatement, because that's just one example of many that have led us to realize that this is the growth mindset we need to realize that, okay, change for the better is in the future, and we can fail, but we have to fail forward because the next meal is waiting. And that's a really unique insight that dawned on me about food allergies, because unlike a condition that is diagnosed, and you kind of put it behind you and you move forward, food allergies is always a forward-facing condition. There's always going to be the next meal. So if you mess up and you have a reaction, well, you have to recover, right? Because you're hungry, you need to eat. And so it embeds within this condition the need for growth mindset, the need to do better. So
Could
from
you
that,
repeat that, Lindsay? I loved that. A distinction between food allergies and others is, so can you say that again? I think we mentioned
absolutely,
that
I
twice.
think that there are very few conditions where they are forward facing as a concern with a chronic, lifestyle. So we had premature twins. They were born, 11 weeks early and weighed 2 pounds. But we have moved through that because our girls are almost 7. And we look back on that time as a really difficult challenge that we overcame. But with food allergies, it's always a forward-facing condition. And so when we fail forward because we have to recover in time for our next meal because we're going to be hungry. And so we get a lot of opportunities to pick ourselves up, to learn from our mistakes, and to really go forward with new ways of thinking and experimentation. So from that comes your resilience, your creative problem solving, your communication, your strategic learning, your collaboration, your grace, your delayed gratification, your compassion, all of the skills that are built into character. And that is a beautiful thing. But to answer your question about the specific life hacks, I think this is where we've learned so much. So just to really distill it, the first thing is with that pain of the learning curve that I spoke of, we now know that food allergies are an invisible disability. It is not top of mind for people who don't face the struggle. And that's okay because it's not people's everyday experience. But what it does is it puts the onus on us as food allergy families to educate and advocate along the way. So if you feel like a broken record and you are getting frustrated by telling people about the food allergies or doing all the education, you have to keep in mind that people appreciate and need this reminder because it's not top of mind and it's not visible to them. The second thing is that communication and collaboration in advance is so important. So anytime a social event or a holiday is coming, I personally reach out, a couple weeks in advance, just asking how I can support the menu and the host if I'm not the one hosting. So even though we're the ones needing the accommodations, I always start with that open approach to collaborate. I ask to clarify the menu items and how can we partner so that I can bring foods that match the menu, and would you also be able to show me the ingredients ahead of time for any homemade foods? Because this is a safety precaution that we have to take every time. But do you see how I approached it with a collaborative tone? And it's about the teamwork of focused on a safe and fun outcome. And that's the common goal that we're up against. So I'm not trying to change the whole event and menu to fit my one child's needs, or in my case, 3 children's needs. What I'm trying to do is accompany the theme, provide safe options, and work together so that empathy is really this shared experience. But I think finding out that menu and supplementing with those right options are important. But I also think it's important to ask, are there other restrictions that we should be concerned about from people attending? So I know in our family, we have a relative who's a vegetarian. So we're very aware that when we're serving mashed potatoes, we need to have 2 different kinds of gravy, vegetarian base and a meat base. So just by even opening up that dialogue of not just trying to keep safe for your own family, immediate family, but also for the other guests, is just a really nice way to partner up with the host and to help reduce that overwhelm. There's another hack I would say too. It's you had mentioned it, Kim, and I want to reiterate it. It's focusing on the foods that a person can have. So one thing we do with Cameron and his 7 categories of food allergens, which often invokes the question, what can he eat? What can this kid eat? Does he eat? is we create a handy one-sheeter of his favorite meals and favorite snacks. And that is a nice visual aid for people to brainstorm pretty quickly and say, we could do this and we could do that. Or how about you bring this item to the party? The other thing we do is when we arrive at the event, or we'll call it Thanksgiving in this case, since it's coming up, we feed the people with the food restrictions first. We do this because the utensils are clean. You know, there hasn't been a risk for cross contact in the buffet setup, not necessarily the food prep. That's required on advanced communication to make sure that you know how it's being prepared. For kids who can't read, another little hack is to put color-coded labels on the utensils, the serving spoons. So maybe like a red and a green.
So smart. Yeah.
Or a red and a green sticker on the foods that are safe or not safe. This will give them choice and empower them with options so that they're not just handed a plate of food to say, here's your meal. But I think, you know, all of these things kind of tie back to the fact that the spontaneity is not there necessarily with attending an event and having food allergies. You do have to really think through the protocols of safety ahead of time. But once you're there, you want the experience to feel relaxing. You want it to be about those social connections. And you want there to be just peace, because these are memory makers, right? And so educating in advance on cross contact, you know, educating on it in advance on reading labels. So I would say, you know, educating on the safety protocols ahead of time is important. But once you're at the event, you want to relax and enjoy each other's company. So when you're thinking about how to educate in advance, an email reminder of here is what cross contact is and how to avoid it. Here is how to read a label and how labels disclaim the top allergens and where you can find them. Here is the food allergy action plan. I think the last life hack that I would say is sharing the food allergy action plan. And it does two things. The first is that it really puts it into language that's difficult to explain, because the symptoms of anaphylaxis are very different from person to person. And the fear associated with anaphylaxis is a little bit opaque. When you say we have food allergies and a person associates that with, you know, a scary situation and they don't want it to happen on their watch.
I think they always go to can't breathe. That's the one I hear all the time. And it's so helpful when we can review that, because it shows all the symptoms, all the systems, that it isn't just respiratory difficult breathing. It is the hives, the rash, the flushing, the swelling. So it is more than that. But I think, and that really helps. It makes it very visual.
You got it. And it also puts it into the doctor's words, because they're the one prescribing this protocol. So when you're just explaining it to a relative who might not understand the severity, but then you show them a food allergy action plan in advance, that lets them see, wow, okay, this is a medical condition. Here are all the symptoms. Here is the response plan. And knowledge is power. I mean, we all want to be informed, because at the end of the day, you know, when we're feeling threatened or fearful, we do experience either a fight or flight. And sometimes in family situations that can feel triggering, some of the family members want to fight you and, you know, challenge you on it. And others want to shut down and just kind of ignore it and not act like it's a big deal. So for them to see the severe symptoms and read about the signs to watch for, the procedures, it actually might build a bridge of empathy, because it shows that indeed, this is a struggle, but we really have to make sure at all costs that these food allergens are avoided.
And I think it engages. So I know when I've invited people, share the food allergy action plan with people at school, with other parents, with the coach, it invites that mutual understanding. And just by sharing, it's just a very brief, for those who aren't familiar with food allergy action plans, it really is, it states what the allergens are, states the symptoms, so people can recognize when a reaction is happening and how to treat. So it's very clear and designed to really paint a picture so you can quickly educate somebody who might be spending time with your child. So it was a great idea, I think, to have that handy when you travel and when you're attending parties, or when you know you're going to be going to someone's house. If they know that up front, I think it's another one of your ways you've used to make connection and create understanding.
That's right. That's right. And I don't, walk up to the door and say, here's the casserole that I made and here's the food allergy action plan, but it is about that communication in advance and making sure that all the preparation is done ahead of time. And it does sound overwhelming as I'm describing it. I hear myself, I do hear, wow, that's a lot of work. But I think that what I would encourage people to do is do it once and just document it, right? Whether it be in an email format that you can just go copy and paste the next time, or a text thread, somewhere that you can actually hold on to, oh, here's what I did to educate on cross contact, how to read labels, and the food allergy action plan. Again, those are like the three big ones that I would cover. That should help a lot, so that the future events, you will have a plan and you will know the questions to ask, the information to offer, and even the substitute foods, right? That worked. So we always used to just bring popsicles when there's desserts that we couldn't have. I think that's just a safe win, and you can bring enough for everybody, so that you're not the only one eating it.
So I like your idea, people come first and food is second. And what you say about, you make that a whole hack on its own. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we all have our favorite food cravings that they sometimes take over our every thought, right? And I have them. I know chocolate's my downfall, but seriously, leading with empathy and just having that people first, food second, it does require more energy from both sides, but your relationships are absolutely worth it. And it really is about, the key ingredient, no pun intended, being fun, right? So food is part of the party. But the lasting memories that will be made are the quality time when you're celebrating life together and you're just doing life together. And I think we lose sight of that because we're scared, right? So we kind of freeze up and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a peanut butter pie that Aunt so-and-so is bringing. Okay, well, that peanut butter pie can be in a different part of the room, but you're going to bring something safe. And, anytime those emotions are tied to fears, it's just robbing us of the joy we can have in spending time together. And people are meaning well, they're just not informed. So it is a little bit of a journey. It's a journey that we need to allow grace and really exemplify grace.
One question I get a lot is, so at family parties, so maybe some cousins are eating the peanut butter pie because they can, and they're little. So toddlers, preschoolers, elementary school kids, and your kids can't. So how do you talk about, to help people understand? So, Johnny's eating that, and that's great because he can have that safely, but how to help them understand, like, Johnny can't touch your son, his face or his skin, or, to keep babies from, so putting babies getting things into their mouth. So I hear that a lot. there's food everywhere and people and it's loud and there's so much going on. How do they understand how can the adults help them to understand about it's not the baby's not ingesting it, but you can't pick the baby up and like pet their face after eating that, or because the baby may also lick or pick up something. So how do we help them to understand things about like the importance of the hand washing and also the being aware if you had it, there could be residue. And so that can just be just as dangerous if a baby ends up then licking or picking up something. And there's also the idea of like cousin might want to share because they are trying to be nice. So how did you talk to your own kids about that and your family? Because I think that was the one I hear over and over people find really daunting.
Yeah, it goes back to kind of those boundaries that every family has that are slightly different than each other's. I know that we had a situation where Maddie, our daughter, was across the street, just playing at our neighbor's house. As a toddler, the mom was watching her for just a couple of minutes, and I was going to come over and join up. And she had found a piece of Reese's Pieces on the ground.
Yeah.
And it was an accidental spill from a candy bag. This was post-Halloween, ironically. Maddie had picked it up and she had kind of then itched her eye, and then her eye was swelling. Now she didn't eat it, which was good, but it terrified me. And that wasn't at a huge party, right? That was like a very isolated incident. What you're describing, Kim, I think is a situation that I was imagining our family in, at that party you just described. I don't trust kids, right, to be around each other if they've had peanut butter, to be around my kids, because they're learning through their mouth and they're learning by feeling.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I think by talking to their parents, I mean, removing the child from that situation first, talking to the parents and saying, we've had to learn the hard way. We thought that hand sanitizer would work, but we learned, interestingly,
Excellent point.
that it doesn't break down the peanut protein. Did you know that? Oh my gosh, no, you would have thought. I know. The next best thing that we sometimes bring are hand wipes, but the really best way is to remove it through washing hands. Now, when you have babies all around, you're the one who's having to go pick them up and wash their hands. Well, if a parent knows, wow, that's so dangerous and I'm so sorry. First of all, you're educating them. And I think that there's going to be more awareness that invisible disability will be more elevated as top of mind awareness for future situations. I've had plenty of experiences where I know I have informed parents in the community around us, because the next time we get a play date invitation or the next time we get a party invitation, I get a proactive text saying, here are the menu items we're thinking for the party. Do you think these are safe, or do you want to see any ingredient labels? Wow. So it is a journey of education, but I go back to the point of people are all meaning well at their core when you're just at a party trying to have safe, fun outcomes. But people's definitions of safe are different if they don't know of the threat. So by you elevating that education, you're going to help them out the next time. But in the situation you described, I would not trust babies with babies or toddlers with toddlers, just like I said, because they're learning with their mouths.
Yeah. So I think through conversation and looking at how, separation as needed, and maybe, with other informed family members, you can trade off. So you're with the baby now, and I can go and visit with my cousins who I haven't seen in 2 years, so you can also actively engage and enjoy yourself, because we're always very aware of the parental burden of managing food allergies, and that we also want to think, how can parents have an enjoyable time as well? So perhaps if you don't have a spouse or your spouse is not there with you, you don't have a support person, who can I ask? Can you be my support person so you can safely take care of the baby or watch the kids while I go and visit or eat? And so you can also feel that you took something positive away from that experience other than vigilant parenting and the kids were all safe, but that you too got your needs met. So on that end, I'd love to hear from you what your recommendations for communicating with extended family and friends. Can you share another situation you found yourself in? Share the language you used,
Mm.
um, and maybe for those who are tuning in that are early days and need our encouragement that it won't always be this way. I know you refer back to how it was then and sort of where you find yourself now. So what what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for encouragement, I feel like I'm in a way different place now. I almost feel like I'm a different person now. But if we back up to the early days of navigating food allergies, I remember carrying around guilt
Mm.
and a bit of embarrassment to speak up because I felt like I was being needy or high maintenance, but this is not the extra hot, triple shot, half calf latte, no foam situation, right? This is not being needy. This is about learning how to protect a life. And I had to change my own mindset before I found those right words, because even within family, I felt like if I was trying to make a point to ask to see an ingredient list, it doesn't mean that I don't trust my family
Yes.
members, right? And that I felt like they were going to be offended.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to reframe this in my mind, but also in a conversation by verbalizing that, listen, manufacturers, they change the ingredients all the time. And there are so many different alternative names for wheat or for milk or whatever the food allergen is. So it is a skill, it takes practice, and it's not just about reading. And I'll say that with practice and with learning how to advocate, because you do learn how to advocate, I don't feel guilty anymore. I've found my approach to be more concise and more collaborative, but also fact-based. So let me kind of give you an example script just to work with here. So, if someone invites you to a social event, right? It's thank you so much for the invitation. We're excited to spend the time together. Because again, it's about the people first, right? With Cameron's food allergies, I'd love to brainstorm some options to keep everyone safe. Are there other restrictions to consider for people coming? Could you share what you're thinking for the food menu? I'm happy to brainstorm what we can bring and what other options he'll be able to have. And so once you kind of understand like what the menu is that's been decided, then you can ask, would you mind snapping pictures of the recipes and ingredients ahead of time and just sharing those with me? These are steps we have to take at home since the manufacturers do change the ingredients without notice. And so I'd really appreciate if we could work together there. But again, it's about that teamwork approach and that shared outcome, because that's the goal. So trusting that the person has that safety in mind is going to be key. But I think you have to get past the feelings of being needy and high maintenance and really change it into you're protecting a life.
And it's
that's
also not, I don't believe you, like I know you heard me that my child has a sesame allergy. It's not that I don't believe you, that you were so careful in what you prepared and when I asked to see the ingredients, when I asked to see the recipes, I love that you talked about it that way. It's about, so that's the double checking I do all the time because it's really about how manufacturers can swap ingredients and how things just have many layers. And so I know you did not intentionally put any sesame in the food. And I love that you paid so much attention and you care so much. When I asked you to look, it is not because I don't think you were attentive or vigilant, but there's sesame and candy corn.
yes.
So that's why I have to double check and look and make sure I'm familiar with the manufacturer and what they're doing. Then I can go and look up the ingredient label and I can read more. But you make a great point. Even when people were really thoughtful and really, they didn't add it as an ingredient. It doesn't mean it's not used as a binder. It doesn't mean it wasn't used in some way that is just not something that's expected for families without food allergies.
That's right.
Can we talk about travel? So I'd love to hear, as you've traveled over the holidays, how you've streamlined things to be, easier than when you first started to try to figure it out.
Yeah. Ooh, travel. Yeah, I guess, we have relied on a couple of tips that we've learned over the years. So I'd say the first one is locating your nearest grocery stores along your journey and also at your destination. So this can feel like a home away from home for you, especially as you go to unknown places or you're really not sure what the meal options are going to be. Grocery stores are great for on-the-run meals. It doesn't just mean you need to buy the ingredients and prepare something. So think through, your finger foods or your snacks or your just, quick protein grabs. People tend to forget that it's an option because they think about eating out as going to a restaurant or a fast food chain that is safe, the one or two that you've identified as safe. But grocery stores are everywhere. And I think that's a really big tip that we forget about. I think the second thing is locating your major hospitals along your route too, for peace of mind, especially at your destination. So if you're going to be going far from home and you have a rural location, then this is going to help you also understand how far out of your boundary of protection do you really want to be with trying new foods or going to unknown meals, right? You can always pack the shelf stable options. In fact, I have somebody who I talked to on a podcast who he went to Peru, okay, a really far trip from the United States. And he said, I packed one suitcase for clothes and I packed 2 giant suitcases of food. So
Yes.
he was able to navigate that trip and be in a foreign country, with a language he didn't know. And he happens to be a doctor, which is funny, but, along with locating those hospitals, he's like, I wanted to be very safe and prepared.
Mm-hmm.
To that point, I think bringing allergy cards are huge. So they have these wallet size cards. You can print them out online. There's a couple of different places. If you look up wallet size allergy cards, and some of them actually translate in different languages too. But these are great because they list the allergens and you can hand them to anybody. You'll get them back, just laminate them. Then you can reuse them. But once the allergens are already listed and you're giving them to a server at a restaurant or even a host of a home that you're spending time with, these are nice. They're another peace of mind. I have a whole pack of them, so I can hand them out to grandparents, parents, extended family, friends. Another hack that we have learned about recently that we just started using are portable microwave lunch boxes. Doesn't that sound like the Jetsons? So these are, lunch boxes that have an adapter, and you can plug in the adapter to your car to heat up your lunch on the go, to heat up your meal, or just any outlet. And so it's awesome, right? Because now you're not just packing your sandwich with, the same old. So now you're in business if you can have a portable microwave lunchbox. And then I think just the last thing is just planning those meals ahead of time. So really thinking through your situation. Are you going to be in a home the whole time, or are you going to be out and about hiking? So you'll want to plan accordingly, but just bringing enough staple foods and those shelf stable meal ideas and snacks, and then even backups, bring more than you think you're going to need. you won't regret that.
So we have a question from an audience member. They'd love to hear how you and your husband speak to your children about thriving with food allergies so that developmentally appropriate along the way. How do you empower them to be resilient and confident with the way you speak to them and teach them?
Yeah, this is the whole premise of Feed Your Can. So this is probably my favorite question that I get. So we remind our kids that everyone has their thing, right? Life is full of struggles and everyone has their struggle. We all do. We walk around with them. Some are obvious and some are not. Some people talk about them, some don't. So it's how we respond to the struggles that shape us. And we talk to our kids about how every day we make choices with our attitude and our energy. And luckily, this concept of growth mindset strategies are fostered in schools. It's encouraged, it's taught. That's the whole premise, I think, of at least elementary education is looking at ways to do creative problem solving, waiting your turn, being patient, how to communicate, making a plan, cooperating with others, making mistakes so we learn. And so we build on those lessons that are taught from the school voice. And we remind our kids that food allergies are the vehicle of learning and how we overcome our struggles. So when we talk to them, it's about not these limitations that they have with the foods they can't eat. Our kids, they do have a sense of adventure, and we remind them that they're growing when they try something new, and that this failure is part of the process. So it's not about what they can't do, but it's about how they navigate around the problem. And one thing I do that I think helps, that I never really thought would help, and it was uncomfortable for me, is to point out the mistakes that I make in my life daily. So I do this on purpose. I point out the mistakes so that they can see their mom is not perfect. And why is this hard for me? Well, I was a perfectionist growing up, right? I mean, I was afraid of making mistakes. I mean, terrified of not looking like I knew what I was doing, or that I, wouldn't have the right answer. And so now I make a point to, laugh at myself when I am clumsy, or, oh gosh, I'm sorry. How did you eat that macaroni and cheese with no fork today? That must have been pretty funny. Just your mom is so silly. So we kind of keep it light in that respect, because we know that with food allergies, the making mistakes is how we learn, and that's part of the process. Like I talked about failing forward. We don't just run away and stop eating and saying food allergies are too hard, I can't do this anymore. We don't get to throw in the towel. We don't get to give up. And so we just pick ourselves up after every reaction, and we take away new lessons. We tell our kids and ourselves, we're going to do better the next time. We just learned something new. Like the latest thing we learned was that pea fiber is hidden in the middle of an ingredient label for gluten-free waffles that we always buy.
Wow.
And what did we learn? Well, we learned that we needed to slow down and read the label twice, because it was hidden in the middle. It wasn't called out, disclaimed as a bolded top 8 allergen. Here's another great example of empowerment in action. So our son, Cameron, he's turning 10 in February, which is very exciting. And I love this age, just watching his wheels turn and the ideas he comes up with. So, getting him involved in oral immunotherapy was a little bit of a late start. Like we probably could have gotten him in earlier, but I was probably a little scared and unsure, so I didn't push it. And then I found out that by age 11, if he doesn't start oral immunotherapy for egg, that the gastrointestinal issues will spike as a potential side effect from age 11 on. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, we have to get in there. And so getting him to agree to oral immunotherapy was pretty easy, because we had laid down a foundation for growth mindset early. And I think if we didn't do that, he wouldn't have trusted us or the process, because he's the one who has to ingest this food allergen that we've told him for 8+ years. You can't, don't be near that.
It's not safe.
Not safe, it's dangerous, it's going to hurt you. And now we just changed the plan on him and said, you have to eat this every day and potentially indefinitely. And it's going to be a little bit of a waiting game, but we're going to ask that you trust the process and that you're going to be able to eat things with egg in it in the future. But in the meantime, you might react and you might be uncomfortable. I mean, the amount of fortitude and courage that that kid has is incredible to me, because he's living proof that the growth mindset approach works. And I'm hopeful we're helping to shape him and preserve his character for future struggles that he is going to face, because no one's immune from those. And I'm not talking the food allergy ones, right?
We know how resilient the kids with food allergies and their parents and caregivers are. Absolutely, because it's just constantly a muscle that they're strengthening. So in the few minutes we have left, Lindsay, can I ask you to summarize these takeaways for parents and caregivers, so as they can move positively and in an uplifted way to think about navigating holiday gatherings, school celebrations, just the events that will be taking place in the next couple months?
Yeah, I think if I had to boil it down, I would say start with the assumption that every person who is going to be involved in a social event has safe fun in mind. Safe is the expected part. Fun is the obvious part. They don't think about safety until you bring it up. So if that's the shared goal, then there shouldn't be room for squabbles, right? It's about uncovering what your child can eat and making sure that you align on those. But start with that idea that safe fun is the goal. And don't assume that people know about food allergies. So remember that, the 3 areas to educate are the cross contact, the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis with the food allergy action plan, and then also how to read the labels and the ingredients. So this invisible disability is going to be made visible because you're going to be educating. But that's a requirement of the process, because you're not just advocating and speaking up for their needs, but you're teaching how to keep a person safe. And I think just that communication in advance, and the offer of that collaboration to partner on, how you can work together to just find safe options, right? You're not asking for this high maintenance, needy order, right? That's not what we're doing here. We are providing these strategies that allow everybody to participate. And inclusivity is a big conversation, but you're not just bringing it up as a need. You are staying solution oriented and coming up with the ideas along the way. I think those are really the key approaches that make for a successful event. And then once you get to the event, all the work has been done and you enjoy it. And you really do focus on those relationships, connections, memories, versus opting out and hiding in fear. We don't want that. That's not a good outcome.
No, it's not. I'm so glad you could be with us today to help people see a way forward, whether they're newly diagnosed, whether their child is growing, gaining more independence. So there's fear around, how will I make sure they listen and do as I've taught them. No matter where you are in the process, I think Lindsay has offered us experience and wisdom to see how, through problem solving, planning, preparation, education, good communication, you can move forward too, so you don't have to miss out. Both parents, caregivers, and the individuals themselves who are living with food allergies, you're modeling every day. We can work this out. We can figure out a way forward, whether it's taking place at school or it's taking place at a friend's house or our family's house. We can figure this out because there's many ways to do things. So we definitely recognize the strength and perseverance of the food allergy community. And you really brought a lot of strategies to the forefront for us to help us navigate that journey. Lindsay also wants us to remember there's some great resources, and those are going to be available in the notes that you'll get in the email follow up. So don't forget, FAIR has wonderful resources. They have the Teal Project around safe Halloween and trick-or-treating. There's kidswithfoodallergies.org, Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, and FACT. So the Asthma and Allergy Foundation has a lot of fantastic information, as does the Food Allergy Research and Education FAIR, which we refer to a lot. So please use those resources. They'll be on the blog. And don't forget, Lindsay has a lot of resources and education and training that you can take part in on her website, Feed the Can. So now let's just move into a moment of mindfulness. If we can take a deep breath, bring ourselves back down into our bodies, out of our thinking minds, out of all of this, the cognitive part. Come back down and just ground yourself in this moment. What do you feel around you? So I feel the chair underneath me. I feel the steadiness of the support under my arms and back. I feel the floor underneath my feet, pushing the soles of my feet into the floor. Taking another deep breath, bringing your focus and attention to the feeling of the inhale and the exhale. How our stomach expands, imagining it like a balloon. Breathing, watching the balloon expand, become lighter, and imagine it now floating up toward the sky. So as you breathe in and then breathing out, sending that balloon up to just float away through the brilliant blue sky. Picture it in your mind, traveling all the way, maybe getting caught up in a breeze and fluttering away. Now, as we imagined the balloon doing that, let's also picture when we get a worry thought in our head. Maybe it's around going to a celebration at school. Maybe it's around doing something for the first time, deciding this year will be the year that you will go to the family party. So you might have that, a lot of worry thinking around that, and a lot of fear in that story. So you can come back to, as you're planning, as you're thinking about how that might be, bring yourself back to what's actually happening in the moment, reminding yourself, right now I'm safe. Right now my child is safe. We're just planning and preparing. And I need to come back to what's real and what is in the present and just breathe my way through that, knowing I can keep stopping, checking in with myself. I can ask myself what would be helpful right now. Is it communicating something? Is it sending a text or an email, asking that question that would help me to feel more comfortable? Or is it just, I've done all of the things that Lindsay's recommended, and now I'm just vaguely uneasy because I don't know how it will be. And we never do know how anything will be until it's happening. But if you find yourself in that place of uneasiness around that, stop, bring yourself back, find your breath. So is it, I feel the breath as my stomach rises and falls, or as my chest expands, or the air coming in and out of my nose. Find the place in your body in that moment that you can feel the sensation of your breath. Come back to that breath. Give yourself a moment. In this moment, I'm safe. We are well. I'm just thinking about something that's making me feel nervous because I don't know how it will be. well, it's okay that I don't know how it will be. I have tools, I have strategies, and we're going to do our best. And if something unexpected happens, I know to recognize the symptoms. I'm going to have my medication with me. We don't go anywhere without the epinephrine, our Benadryl, and I'm going to be able to treat and address a reaction if that is an unexpected situation that occurs. So even if maybe my worst case scenario, I'm ready for that, I'm prepared, we will deal with that and things will still be okay. So as always, thank you so much to our wonderful guest and our audience members, those who sent questions. Please go to the blog, please go to Feed Your Can and check it out, because you know, it really does take a village. It takes a lot of information, strategies, and tools, and know that you're not alone. There are other moms and dads and caregivers navigating this, just like Lindsay, and everyone's just doing their best. So we really honor your attempts just to try to find ways for your family that you can thrive and not just simply survive with food allergies. On behalf of the Wiser Center, thank you so much for being with us. Please join us again in November and December. Thank you.